Now we have Kobelyan, Khachatur, Yerevan, Armenia, two approaches of preserving and dissemination of the genocide memory.
Good afternoon, everyone. My purpose today is to represent two approaches of preservation and dissemination of genocide memory. Any nation who survived genocide considered it as an important task to preserve the genocide memory and to disseminate the remembrance not only in its ethnic environment, but also outside of the nation and the state. Collective and historical memory play an important role in the political and public life. The purpose of my presentation is to show different approaches of the preservation and dissemination of genocide memory with the example of Armenian genocide and Holocaust. To investigate above mentioned, we have studied the following three issues. First, the most common, the most popular unit of mechanism for the preservation and dissemination of genocide memory in the nation. Second, genocide victims' remembrance days and using these dates in opening the museums, monument and memorial complexes. Third, the inclusion of self-defense, uprising and mass outbreaks in the concept of Armenian genocide and Holocaust museums' permanent exhibitions. Let's turn to them step by step and try to compare them with one another. The most common mechanism for the preservation and dissemination of Armenian genocide memory is memorial complex or monument, and for the Holocaust memory, museum, memorial museum, and science research center. For confirming above mentioned, let's show some facts. By 2010, 288 monuments were built dedicated to the Armenian genocide in 44 countries, and by 2009, 264 science research centers and museums were built dedicated to the Holocaust in 28 countries. Table number 1 presents number of monuments and memorial places dedicated to Armenian genocide victims in different parts of the world. We can see that about 1/3 of monuments were built in Europe, while in the America and in Oceania, where the Armenian diaspora forms a great part, monuments do not exceed 15%. In the Soviet Armenia, until 1988, there were only a few monuments, only 9. This fact is explained by that in Armenia, after the confirmation of Soviet, conversations about genocide gradually stopped. And in general, the Armenian-Turkish conflict talks were not encouraged. The situation has changed, especially after Gorbachev's restructuring and in the years of Karabakh movement, and after the collapse of Soviet Union and independence of Armenia. Period of that waves, which can be dated from 1987 to 1995, there were built 24% of monuments dedicated to Armenian genocide. The next wave was after the 90th anniversary of Armenian genocide in 2005. In particular, from 2005 to 2010, there were built 32% of monuments. Table number 2 presents number of museums and science research centers dedicated to the Holocaust in the different parts of the world. In this case, we see a huge polarization because in the America and in Oceania, there are 207 science research centers and museums, and the lion's share, 72%, is in the US. It is possible to explain this fact that is in the United States is the largest Jewish diaspora, and the Jewish Holocaust, to some extent, can be considered part of American value system. Let's just say that in the New York State, there are 47 science research centers and museums, and it is more than science research centers and museums in Europe, Asia, Africa, and in CIS. The main wave of foundation museums and science research centers dedicated to the Holocaust was from 1979 to 2000. When there were founded 184 units, it is 69%. I'd like to conclude this point by saying that the most common mechanism for preservation and dissemination of the Holocaust memory is the science research centers and museums, which often go under the same structure and complement each other. In contrast to Armenian genocide, this unit has more opportunities and can not only preserve, but also introduce it to more nations and include it in the value system of that nation. While monuments' main function is to preserve the memory in the ethnic environment and its transmission from generation to generation. It is interesting to observe the Remembrance Day and the events of genocide process and using these dates in the context of our opening museums, monuments. The approaches are different in the case of Holocaust and Armenian genocide. Both cases, the process of genocide took several years, and choose a special day as a Remembrance Day for the genocide victims, or the day and date for opening the museums and memorial complexes is very important. This fact has a very big role in the formation of remembrance and the characteristics of the distribution process. The Genocide Victims Remembrance Day for both Armenian and Jewish people have structural features, and the main difference is the name. Armenian Genocide Victims Remembrance Day and Holocaust Martyrs and Heroes Remembrance Day. It is clear that the Jews allocated people who heroically fought against Nazism. In the case of Armenians, there is no such approachment, though during the genocide years there were serious self-defense battles. The Day of Remembrance of Armenian Genocide marked on April 24, when Western intellectuals were decapitated. The Remembrance Day of the Holocaust is marked on 27th day of Jewish month Nisan. The date coincides with the end of April and the beginning of May, the date of Warsaw Ghetto's uprising. In addition, in 2006, the United Nations General Assembly defines the 27th of January as International Holocaust Remembrance Day. 27th of January is a date in 1945, when the largest Nazi death camp, Auschwitz-Birkenau, was liberated by Soviet troops. For this kind of choice, Jewish people have two reasons. First, the creation of State of Israel was connected with the Arab-Israeli wars, and in this case, there was the need to provide more motivation for the newly formed Israeli army. The second factor was that the Jewish Holocaust was internationally accepted, and there was other problem, to make Jewish nation to come out of the victim image. The opening of Armenian genocide and Holocaust monuments, museums, and memorial complexes largely are in the genocide events anniversaries. The 36% of memorial places and monuments dedicated to Armenian genocide were built in commemoration anniversaries. The only major museum of Armenian genocide was opened in 1995 in the genocide's 18th anniversary. We see completely different approaches in the case of Holocaust museums. It is common to organize the museum openings in the Warsaw Ghetto's uprising and Auschwitz-Birkenau's liberation anniversaries. 8% of Holocaust museums were opened on the Warsaw Ghetto's uprising anniversaries. The third issue is the inclusion of self-defense battles, mass outbreaks, and uprising in the concepts of permanent exhibition of Armenian genocide and Holocaust museums. In its 18 years history, Armenian Genocide Museum hasn't given a place to the Armenians' powerful self-defense battles against Turkish regular army during the Armenian genocide in Ottoman Empire in its permanent exhibition. The only exception is a small part which presents the self-defense battle of Musa Dag. The presence of this segment, in my opinion, will provide Franz Werfel's The 40 Days of Musa Dag, the fact of the book, which however, is not always included in the permanent exhibition, while the great part of Holocaust museums have included the Warsaw Ghetto's uprising in their permanent exhibition. About observation, we can come to the conclusion that the preservation and dissemination of Armenian genocides and Jewish Holocaust museum memories have very different approaches and perspectives. Among Armenians, it is more common to build monuments at commemoration anniversaries. Among Jewish people, such traits are, however, displayed weaker. The meaning of Remembrance Day for Jews very often is corresponding with the idea of struggle, and in the case of Armenians, it has status of the victim. The inclusion or absence of self-defense, uprising, and mass outbreaks in the concepts of permanent exhibition shows the quality of the memory which is designed for the future generation. Well, that covers everything I want to say. Thank you for your attention.
Спасибо большое. Это удивительно. Первый раз такую лекцию услышала в своей жизни. Я просто хотела сказать два слова, что огромное спасибо за просто умнейшая вещь, умнейшая. И в Иерусалиме у нас есть огромное место для замечательного музея катастрофы, замечательного, впечатляющего, но нет денег у армян построить хороший музей. И вот я даже говорила с католикосом, что, может, они найдут, и я, может, им как-нибудь там помогу. Так что вот у меня к вам огромная благодарность вам и симпатия огромная. Спасибо вам.